Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Ghost Story Café. My name is Megan, and through this podcast I hope to explore some different topics surrounding the supernatural and hoping to learn some more through this experience. For today's episode, I plan to talk about some different haunted houses around New Brunswick. This seemed like a good topic for today, seeing that Halloween is coming up in just a couple of short weeks, so I hope that you guys enjoy. The two haunted houses that I'm going to be discussing today are Earle House, which is located on Lancaster Avenue in St. John, New Brunswick, and the second will be the Boyce Mansion that is located on Waterloo Row in Fredericton, New Brunswick. So to start off, I think I'll begin by talking a little bit about the Earle House. So this one holds a little bit of significance for me. I'm originally from St. John, and I can remember growing up and always being excited anytime traveling on the west side of St. John because I would always hope that we would drive by the Earle House. It's definitely one of my favorite spots in St. John. It's definitely a really cool looking place, and there's always been some kind of creepy, spooky stories that have surrounded this house. So just to give a little bit of a backstory, this information I found on mynewbrunswick.ca and gives kind of a little bit of a history on the Earle House. So it was built in the 1870s by Thomas William Robinson. Many local St. Johners are definitely familiar with the Earle House, some of the stories that float around about it being apparently haunted. It's kind of widely known, I would say, as the witch house because it has these really big, distinctly tall windows. And the legend has it that the windows are so tall so that the witches could fly in and out of Earle House on their broomsticks without having their hats knocked off when they go through. So I'm not sure what you guys might think about that, but I always thought, especially growing up, that was a cool story. And driving by, I would always be excited because, it's the witch house. You could kind of imagine the witches flying in and out of the house on Halloween night. So I believe now the Earle House, at one time, it was just a single standing house, just one manor. But now it's divided up into apartments. So as of right now, I'm sure there's probably some people living there. Whether or not they've experienced any spooky or supernatural happenings there, it's hard to say, but it would be very cool to hear from somebody who's lived there, or maybe if anyone knows somebody who has lived there and had some experiences, please let me know. I would really like to hear more about that. So one of the stories about the Earle House that I can remember, I would have heard this. I was in elementary school at the time, and we went on a bus tour of the city. And I remember when we were going past, the tour guide pointed out the Earle House and had explained that it was the witch house. So the story has it that there was a family, I'm not sure exactly when this would have been, but a family moved into the Earle House, and they were looking to kind of start their life there. They had a family, and rumor has it that there was a witch that had kind of cast a curse over the Earle House. So I'm not sure if maybe she would have lived there at one time. The story's a little bit unclear, but that's what I can remember hearing. So I think that the family had some different experiences there, some different supernatural things that were happening to them, and one day decided that they wanted to have a family photo taken together outside of the Earle House. So standing together, the photographer got ready to take their picture with an old film camera, and they were very surprised to see what the final photo looked like. When the picture was developed, they looked at the photo and were surprised to see that in the developed film, all of them were missing their heads. So that's definitely pretty spooky. I'm sure if that happened to me, I would probably want to be moving out of there pretty quickly. I really wish that I could remember the name of the tour guide who had told this to us on this bus tour in St. John. I did try to find some published stories online, some different articles about ghost stories from the Earle House, but I wasn't able to find a whole lot about hauntings. But these are just some of the different stories that I've heard from local St. Johners, and also from going on that bus tour of St. John once when I was in elementary school. So yeah, I'm not sure what you guys might think about that, if you believe that the Earle House is haunted or if it isn't haunted. But definitely when you're passing by, it's a very distinctive looking house. It kind of has that Gothic style to it, very Gothic looking architecture. And it's definitely a very beautiful home. It's kind of got those cool, tall, winding trees outside, and it definitely looks like something that you would see in a TV series or a movie about ghosts and the supernatural. So if you've never seen the Earle House before, if you're from St. John, or if you're ever happened to take a trip through St. John, I highly recommend driving down Lancaster Avenue so that you're able to see the Earle House for yourself. Okay, so the next haunted house that I'm going to be talking about is the Boyce Mansion, which is located on Waterloo Row in Fredericton, New Brunswick. So in reading up about the Boyce Mansion, I wasn't able to find what year it was built or who it was built by, but I did find some good information also on the mynewbrunswick.ca website. They talked about Boyce Mansion and also a couple of other different haunted locations in New Brunswick. So if you're interested in reading more, I highly recommend looking up that site. I was able to find a couple of interesting points of information though, and if you're from Fredericton or you've been driving around, the Boyce Mansion, it definitely stands out on Waterloo Row. It's a very beautiful home, similar to the Earle House. It has like a very stately kind of Gothic look to it. Very unique for sure. It's a beautiful spot. So what I was able to find out was that for many years, the Boyce Mansion was actually an off-campus residence for male students who were going to the University of New Brunswick. I'm not sure exactly how long it was a male residence. At this time now, it's just been divided up into apartments, so there are just different people living there. So I don't think that it has been an off-campus residence for a little while. But maybe if any of you guys would know exactly how long, maybe you could let me know about that. What students have reported is that they have seen the spirit of a woman at night, and she's often seen leaning over their bed. Sometimes she strokes their hair at night, and she always whispers things to them, like very kind things, that it's okay. And she's always very comforting whenever she appears. Even despite this, though, it was very unsettling, of course, for the people who were staying there. And I think it had mentioned in this article that at first they thought it was just a dream, but when they realized that multiple different people living there were experiencing this same woman, I think they kind of put two and two together and realized, maybe something a little bit more paranormal is happening here than we thought. So aside from seeing her at night, they also reported seeing her walking through the halls of the mansion. They reported seeing her figure around the property. In trying to find out, why exactly this woman was still at the Boyce Mansion, they were able to find out a couple of things about her history. So she had a son. He was, I believe, in his late teens or early 20s, and he had moved away from Fredericton and moved away from the manor where he grew up. So this woman, she continued to live at the mansion, while her son had moved away. And they always kept in touch with one another by sending each other mail and sending each other letters. So after a little while had passed, her son fell ill, and he had attempted to send her a letter to let her know that he wasn't doing very well. Unfortunately, this letter was lost in the mail, as they explained on the mynewbrunswick.ca website. and she never received the letter from her son. Because of this, she didn't have a chance to say goodbye to him before he passed away. So it would seem that she was always kind of in a state of mourning after that, and kind of looking at her backstory and the way that she interacted with the male students at the mansion, I can't help but wonder if maybe she saw comfort in looking out for those students. Maybe in a way they would have reminded her of her son that she had lost so many years ago. But it's definitely a very heart-wrenching story for sure. And I don't live very far actually from the Boyce Mansion here in Fredericton. So when I did hear this story, I was so surprised. Going by, I always had an appreciation for it. It's beautiful, but I didn't know anything about the paranormal events happening there or the history of the mansion. So it was very, very interesting to hear that. It's hard to say. There's still some people living there now. Whether or not any of that paranormal activity is still going on, or if her spirit is there, whether or not she may have been able to move on from that location, but I can only hope that maybe she would have gotten some peace. Interestingly enough, just while we're on the topic of the Boyce Mansion, there was one time, probably would have been about 6 or 7 months ago, I was taking a taxi to work, and I ended up having a chat with the taxi driver about the Boyce Mansion when we drove by. I really wish that I remembered his name. I wish that I could get some more stories from him to tell you about. Unfortunately, I can't remember, but he was able to tell me that he lived at the Boyce Mansion for a short time. I think this would have been a few years ago, but he said that it was a really lovely place to live. He didn't go into too much detail about any of the events that happened to him, but he said it was definitely a very cool and interesting spot. Definitely like some cool architecture on the inside. It would be very cool for sure, I think, to see some photos of what the inside of the mansion looks like, because during my research online, I was mostly only able to find just some pictures of the outside. So, yeah. That's the story of the Boyce Mansion. I don't know. What do you guys think? It could be true? Do you believe? Let me know. Okay, so just kind of moving on. I did find another location that I thought would be interesting to chat with you guys about, but I've included it more as like an honorable mention because I wasn't able to find any solid paranormal stories about this spot. Just some people that had kind of shared some pictures of it online and made suggestions that it could have been haunted. So I'll just tell you a little bit about it and we'll go from there. So the honorable mention for a haunted house is the Todd Mansion in St. Stephen, New Brunswick. So this house was built between 1890 and 1895 by William Todd, and he worked in the lumber trade at the time. And I also discovered by reading up online, I think I have a link to the website here. So this was on the website historicplaces.ca that William Todd, he was also the Lieutenant Governor of New Brunswick between 1923 and 1928. So if you're familiar with the St. Stephen area, or if you've traveled through, you might be familiar with the Todd Mansion. It's very beautiful. You could kind of compare it, like the style of the home, a bit to the Earle House in St. John. It has that same kind of gothic feel to it, almost like a little bit of a witchy vibe. It is so beautiful. As I said, unfortunately, I could not find any solid paranormal stories. There could be some out there, but I wasn't able to find anything at this time. I did notice, though, that there was a paranormal website that was kind of doing some stuff around New Brunswick at the time, and they did share a photo of the Todd Mansion, and I think they mentioned something about trying to do an investigation, like a paranormal investigation there. So that was as far as I got in my research on the Todd Mansion. But if you guys maybe have heard anything yourselves, or if you know somebody that's had an experience at the Todd Mansion. It would be really cool to hear about that. I mostly was able just to kind of find out about the history and who it was built by, which is also really cool because it's one thing to see it in passing every day, but then it's interesting to know kind of how it came to be and what year it was built too. It's interesting to think that this house has been around since 1895 and we can still appreciate it today. So maybe there's some spirits there, maybe there aren't, but one way or the other, it's a very beautiful home, and it definitely has a very haunting quality to it. Okay, so in looking up just some different things about local haunted houses, I came across something that was really interesting, something that I didn't expect to find. This was on remax.ca, so it was written by a realtor, and it was a blog that she had written about haunted houses. I guess you don't really think about that so much, like whether or not realtors would come into challenges like this, like dealing with selling houses that people report to be haunted, but she kind of gave like a really good description of this in her article. So what she said was that if a place is reported to be haunted, or if it kind of looks spooky or has like a haunted vibe to it, maybe there's rumors about a house being haunted, it actually does take longer for them to sell the property. I guess it makes sense. People probably would be a little bit leery. I know I would be if I thought that I was about to buy a haunted house. So I understand on some level. They did offer some different advice for people on the market of buying houses if you ever have been worried about buying a haunted house. They said that sellers of houses, they're actually not obligated to tell you about different stigmas with the house. So say if there was like some paranormal activity going on, they wouldn't have to tell the buyers about that, or if there was like some things about the history of the house that maybe were a little bit spooky, they wouldn't be obligated to tell you that. So what she suggested was that you should always do your research, also ask lots of questions, try to find out all the dirt about the place. And I thought one of the most interesting points was to ask the neighbors, because maybe they would be able to let you know a little bit more about that spot, and if they know some kind of spooky or paranormal stuff about it that you should know before you get yourself into it. So kind of aside from just, paranormal, they had also kind of mentioned that your home has an energy, can be positive or negative, and there can be different ways that you can kind of affect some of that energy yourself. Doesn't necessarily have to be like supernatural or paranormal. So just some different things that could kind of improve how you feel in your home. And they also told a little bit about something called feng shui. So I kind of just interpreted that to be like the flow of energy in your home, and kind of gave some suggestions or like some different things to watch out for. So one thing that I had read I thought was really cool was a couple of different things that could impact the energy of your home. I don't know if you believe it to be true. These are just some suggestions that they had. So the first one was that it's bad luck to have a staircase that faces your front door. So apparently, if you do have a staircase that faces your front door, they call this the poison arrow. So it causes a bad energy to come into your home. I can't say exactly why. I didn't really get like a good explanation, but might be something good to know. There was another point that they made that I thought was really interesting, that if your front door is perfectly in line with your back door, that can also cause you to kind of get some bad energy in your house. So not just like a supernatural sense, but just like the energy in general, I think. So what they said was that the good energy comes in the front door and then will leave directly out the back door. So, and I thought that was kind of interesting to hear, because I don't think personally I've seen too many houses that you can see like straight through the house, like front door, and then boom, you can see directly to the back door. But maybe they do that for a reason, because it kind of like messes with the energy of the house. I'm not saying that any of this is true necessarily. This was just something that I had read and was kind of thinking about, on the topic of haunted houses. Like, maybe you do have something paranormal going on, but what if some of that influence or some of that negativity you feel could be caused by like the feng shui of your home? So I wanted to kind of mention that too. I don't know what you would think. I'm not even 100% sure what I think about it, but definitely neat. Might be cool to even kind of read up a little bit more about that and learn a bit more about it. So I'm sure that there are many other haunted houses in New Brunswick. I just really scraped the surface with this today. I kind of just picked out the two that I could find some really solid kind of stories about, the Boyce Mansion and the Earle House in St. John. Wasn't able to find as much about the supposedly haunted location in St. Stephen. That was the Todd Mansion in St. Stephen, New Brunswick. But I hope that you guys have at least enjoyed listening about the couple of reportedly haunted houses in New Brunswick. So just to kind of wrap up, I wanted to leave off with a couple of questions. So, have you ever lived in a haunted house? If you have, what was that like? Also, do you believe that spirits can haunt a specific location? Can somebody's soul kind of linger on in their home or a certain spot long after they've been gone? I guess that's kind of an age-old question, but let me know what you guys think. Just on a final note, I also wanted to let you guys know that I was able to set up an email, ghoststorycafe@gmail.com. If you guys wanted to shoot me over some different ghost stories that you have, or some different suggestions of things that maybe we could talk about or look into a little bit more, that should be all ready to go. So I look forward to hearing from you all, and I really hope that you enjoyed this podcast episode. Thank you. Bye.